Thank you so much for allowing Brit+Co to talk to you about your dark secrets. My name is Jasmine Williams, and I'm a staff writer here. I cover everything from motherhood to fashion, and I love books. So I'm excited to just do a deep dive and chat about your dark secrets. So it actually comes out next Tuesday, July 30th, which I know you must be like really excited.
Really excited, a little nervous, but really excited, definitely.
And it's amazing because you literally just came out with the alone time in May. And so my question to you is like from one writer to another, how do you like manage working on multiple exciting projects?
Well, Jasmine, you are definitely tracking. There is multiple exciting projects is the theme of my life right now. And thank you to Brit+Co for having me. I'm super excited to talk about your dark secrets. It is a struggle, as I'm sure that you know, as a writer and a staff writer, and rather being a mother. It's just I have two small kids, and so it is a constant game of what are my priorities this morning, and when I'm on deadline, my priority. I deprioritize sleep, what I wouldn't recommend, but for me it comes down to how much do you want something.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that like I don't want my writing career to flourish, or I don't want this book to be published all the time. It means that I want sleep the most right now, or I want my child to be calm and sated with breakfast at the moment. And it just, it's a constant fluctuating matrix. Uh, I think for anyone that's got multiple passions and pursuits, and it comes down to how much you want something at this particular time. And so publishing The Alone in May and following up with Your Dark Secrets so soon was really about these are two really, for me, great opportunities to bring new stories into the world. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
I love that, especially with the fact, I just have one, so you having two kids, I'm like, oh my gosh, on top of it's this constant, and I know, which I didn't even bring up any like questions about balancing because I feel like mothers typically get that. Well, how do you balance it all? And it's like, I don't know, not at all.
Who has the answer to
We
that?
are winging it daily. And so my next question is, Your Dark Secrets is actually your sixth book, and you write these really amazing thrillers. So what's the most thrilling aspect? And I mean that like with all pun intended. What's the most thrilling aspect of writing these books that keep people on the edge of their seats?
I would say the act of writing and discovering. To your point, this is my sixth book, and each story for me has been very unique in how it has come about, how I have rooted out the origins of my characters and their insecurities and their hangups and their challenges and their respective goals. It's been about taking an idea, seeing an idea that's really stuck with me like a headline over the years, and then really digging into it and kind of I always compare writing to archaeology or like forensic work where you're just kind of digging into the dirt around the bones and uncovering the greater skeleton of the story, or that character's trauma, or that character's magnum opus, whatever they're after. It's fun for me. I definitely outline, but it's always fun for me to discover as I'm writing. I never know exactly where the story is ending. So I find that I am discovering it alongside the reader sometimes.
And that's really good because I know when I just from the first page in meeting Addison Stern, which she immediately grabbed my attention for the first page. She's such a powerhouse. She's so dynamic and she's very strong-willed, but also layered, which I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But I think readers will love meeting her too. So, when you were kind of coming up with her character, did you base her off of one person, or is she just kind of like a combination of multiple people across different, I guess, different industries? Because I know she's a PR exec, and I'm always interested about PR execs. So, yeah, like tell me about her personality, her characteristics.
Yeah, thank you for saying that about Addison. I love her. She is one of the most dynamic characters I've ever written. And in coming up with her basic personality, I just thought, what would a woman say in a professional setting with zero regard or expectations if she was just single-minded about her success and her career path? Um, what is everything that I've desired to say in a professional setting, but have restrained myself from from choosing to share? Um, I think obviously we all have our hangups and our insecurities, and those eventually come out for Addison and her journey. But initially, I thought, what if someone just tamped all of that down, and a woman in a very cutthroat environment, how would she show up? Would she have any friends? Would she have a lot of accolades? And which one would she value more or feel more defined by? So it was, she started out as kind of this idea, and then I really did my best to make her more of a complex person with the personal traumas that we all have that inform her taciturn behaviors, and also her quick wit and her snark that I think is what defines her. I loved writing her. It was so much fun to have her engaging conversations with other characters because it was just like a constant like 1 2 1 2 like back and forth dialogue.
And she is completely brilliant. Like you said, that snark just literally just, oh my God, I wish I could just immediately think of something on the spot and not show that I'm really rattled. And, like you said, you do a really good job later on. We see, like, it's not that she doesn't feel fear or insecurity, but she's just like, hey, I have a goal and this is what matters more than like fear. So I love that. And just concerning her career, because as readers will see, she ends up kind of being in these situations where her career requires her to do a lot. It requires so much of her. And it kind of makes me wonder, like with PR execs, man, like are they always on go, on call? Like, do you think PR execs have like a busy life? I'm not sure if PR execs are dealing with everything that Addison in the book will deal with, but just do you feel like they kind of have that same tenacity or that level of strength? And when it's time for me to do my job, I have to go.
Yes, that's a great question. I definitely did a lot of research into the world of PR, specifically in Hollywood. I I think Addison is in a very unique situation. She is a cutthroat public relations executive in Hollywood, dealing with the world's and Hollywood's morally worst elite who happen to have a high concentration of power. And what happens is she comes to find out that her clients are getting murdered, and pretty soon she becomes the common denominator between um, all of these victims. And so she must set out on this quest to find out what is going on, what is the truth of the matter, and is there someone targeting her to make her look like the culprit? Because um, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it might be Addison Stern behind the murders. So she has the doubly difficult job of maintaining her career ascension while trying to uncover what is happening to her clients and discover who is coming after her and her reputation, because quickly the media gets a hold of the idea. I do think that public relations executives are, maybe they're not on call all the time, but they are dynamic individuals in an industry meant to support and conceal some of the most interesting activities of our favorite actors in Hollywood. And Addison particularly deals with anybody, with the world's best and worst, the most elite status. So that includes like politicians, that includes royalty, that includes actors, directors, CEOs. He does it all. And in my research, particularly targeting public relations in Hollywood, I heard about this scandal that occurred with Kim Kardashian years ago. And in my research, I recalled that and came to find out that her publicist actually orchestrated this whole thing just to get publicity for, 2009 Kim Kardashian. And I thought, this is a very Addison Stern thing to accomplish, to think outside the box, to completely falsify an event just to get all eyes on my client. I was inspired by that. Kudos to that publicist, wherever you are. And yeah, really took a lot of inspiration from real world examples like that. It seems like a very cutthroat but exciting role in Hollywood.
Yeah, like I'm so obsessed. I used to think that I wanted to do PR, and I was like, wait, maybe don't want to be in that world. I might be on the outskirts, hence journalism.
Yeah.
But I just love, like I said, your portrayal of Addison. And it's so interesting because then on the other side is Connor. And so when I first was first introduced to him in his chapter, I was like, oh, how in the world are these two people connected? Because they almost seem kind of like complete opposites, not just romantically, but professionally. But then, like you said, layers. It's the layers in who they are outside of their individual roles. So the question that I have is, do you think that it's possible for one person to betray another person and total forgiveness to be there? Or do you feel like they will always kind of have like some tension between them or deal with each other with a little bit of caution?
I think that, to your point, I think that's exactly the right characterization of Connor and Addison. They are polar opposites, and yet they are magnetized and attracted to one another. They cannot help but alternately repel and also um, be drawn to one another because they are so at the same time very similar. I think it's possible to experience betrayal and then also to offer forgiveness when you come from the right combination of baggage. And I think Addison and Connor definitely have complementary forms of baggage. They're both, you know, self-decided loners. They're both career driven. Connor's in the world of private investigations, and Addison, when she is faced with the prospect of her clients continuing to die, and her becoming the common denominator between these cases, she must enlist his help as the best private investigator that she's ever known. She both respects him professionally and is incredibly attracted to him. And so it becomes this back and forth of sexual tension between former lovers who now must become professional, uh, not partners, but maybe they're complementary to one another at the beginning of the story. And I think their respective forms of baggage are also complementary in that they have trust issues, as many of us do. And I think the question of whether or not you can experience betrayal and then forgive someone comes down to what is your capacity, what is your past, what has your past um, taught you about the depth of your own mistakes, and what I think we might wish someone to forgive us of doing. Because at any given point throughout our hopefully long lives, we are the unlikable person in the room, right? At some point, you are the unlikable person in the room. And maybe that's for 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or longer than that. But I think that empathy, that experience would hopefully offer Addison and Connor that kind of capacity for forgiveness.
And I love that for them. I'm not going to spoil it for the readers because, there's so much that takes place like once I wouldn't even say once the book gets started because it's just things that are constantly going on and you are constantly leading up to that big moment at the end that shocked me. And I feel like going back, because I'm rereading it actually, and going back, I was like, you know what? I can see why everything was so connected. Like it's just little nuggets that if you're not paying attention, and I love when authors do that, like drop little hints that you're like, oh, this is not really important, and it actually ends up being very, very important. So love that. Um,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And with your characters, like we were talking about, just having layered characters and with all of the characters that you've written in your books, how do you go about weaving in their personal trauma, their culture, and how they choose to identify? Because we know with Addison, she's Asian American, and then I think you also have written about Asian American characters before, but just culture, identity, personal trauma. Like, how do you feel that all three of these things kind of make the characters you've written about who they are?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always try to begin with the fishbowl idea of my characters are in a fit, they're the fish and they're in a fishbowl and they don't know what water they're swimming in. They don't know what their water is composed of, what cross section or matrix. Instead of categorizations, they actually live because they don't. They're too close to them. So Addison, I think she would define herself upfront as a public relations badass, prisoners kind of person. And then as she continues on her emotional journey, she begins to understand she comes from more of her background, rather more of her background has infiltrated her life, more of her um, personal traumas and her hangups and her disappointments and her past dreams really have come to present themselves in her current life in ways that she didn't expect or desire. But that's what happens when we leave trauma unresolved, right? And I think much in the same way, I don't think that you can separate your culture from your trauma, or rather your culture from who we are, in that we're all swimming in the fishbowl of our culture and we don't really realize it. Sometimes we just go about our life unconsciously or subconsciously incorporating our cultures into our reactions and our behaviors. And Connor is the same way. He's an amalgam of all the people who came before him. And it's really about my characters coming to understand who they are in this moment and also acknowledging the influences, both good and bad, of where they come from. And hopefully allowing that knowledge to propel them into toward their goals and toward, more balanced, healthier ideas. But sometimes they get tripped up along the way because otherwise it would be a very interesting book.
And I mean, that's what makes it so realistic because I think all of us are, we're all dealing with our own personal trauma, our culture, our identity, and then trying to go out into the world and figure out, well, how do I kind of exist? Do I exist in the bubble of, what my community says or what society is saying, what education is saying? There's all of these things, and I feel like that's what makes Addison and Connor so realistic because it's one of those things where, don't get me wrong, I love reading books where you immediately like a character or watching things because it's in a form of escapism, but I really feel drawn to characters where they're messy, they're flawed, because we are all, you can have a person who's quote unquote good. Like, my idea of what a protagonist is has changed so much. Even like, I'll say watching something like The Dark Knight, going back and realizing like, oh, Batman is flawed. He's very flawed. He's acting on a lot of trauma.
Very true.
And when you're presented with something like that, we were very at least growing up, we were kind of referred to protagonists as, oh, this is the good guy, you have the bad guy, and then it's like, oh, when you find yourself starting to realize like, oh, the antagonist is layered, you can kind of understand why they're moving that way. And so I don't know, I feel maybe with some people they might look at Addison like, oh, she's an antagonist. It's like, not really, not really. And Connor isn't exactly like your protagonist either. They're not, it's not either or. It's a lot of gray area.
Absolutely. And I think that's life, right? That those are complex. Hopefully those are complex um people that hopefully these characters reflect as complex people that a reader might encounter in their daily lives. We are all complex, and no one starts off. I truly don't think that anyone starts off as like the villain of the story. It's more interesting to me to find out how that person came to be this way. Maybe they're mostly villain, but there's another portion that I think merits exploration. And definitely with Addison and Connor, I would not put them into an easy category like a good guy or bad guy. And definitely, I think Addison is my protagonist. She's got a lot going for her. She's got a lot of great qualities and characteristics that I would look for in a friend. I'm definitely intimidated to be in the same room as her professionally, but she's got the kind of ambition and drive that I think I would wish for if I didn't care about society's expectations or my family's expectations. She's a one track mind, which I think is interesting. I think to dive into a mindset such as that, that's so different from mine, I think is always interesting and worthy of a couple hundred pages myself.
And like I said, I'm excited for people to have Your Dark Secrets in their hands next week because it's such a good book. It's such a good book, and I feel like there are different lessons that people could take from the book as well. So I can't, like I said, I can't wait for people to start reading it. And I'm sure it's gonna become
Thank
an
you.
easy bestseller. And like now I'm thinking like, oh gosh, we just wrote about like mystery and thriller books. I'm gonna have to add this to it. It's so good. So this next section is just gonna be kind of like three rapid fire questions just to get to know, a little bit more about you. So I know we're
I'm
talking
ready.
about writing thriller books and everything. I love rom-coms, but if I had a choice, my first go-to is like thriller and horror movies, which I think some people find weird, but for you,
No, it's the best.
it is. It is. Like, what's your go-to? And I say it either or, but what's your go-to thriller TV series and movie that you could just watch over and
I could watch Killing Eve over and over as a series. I also really like Lupin, with Omar Sy. I have not finished the series yet, or the most recent season for Lupin, but it's so good. It's on Netflix. And then thriller horror movie is 1,000% the Scream series. Every single Scream film is like my jam. I could recite the entire first Scream movie word for word. It's embarrassing and also like my greatest joy. Very proud of it.
it's such a I have like so many just like growing up in the 90s. So I literally watched Scream in theaters and I probably should not have. I probably was like, oh God, was I like 4 or 5 when it came out? I don't know if I should have been in the movie theater, but I was there and
It was formative.
it was such a like I would look around the theater and I saw like all of these girls kind of like, oh my God, like with their boyfriends, and I'm like this little kid, like, this is fun. And
Let's do
it
it
occurred
again.
to me like maybe I'm not having like the right reaction to this movie because I was just intrigued by the motive, and that's always just kind of like how I've been. So I love that. I love that.
We're tracking. I'm
Yeah,
right there with
yeah.
you.
And it's so interesting. So knowing that you love everything about thriller and horror movies, how did you kind of get into watching French TV series on Netflix without the subtitles? Like, how did that end up happening?
Yeah, it's so random. It's such a random factoid about me, but it is because I moved to France. I had my quarter life crisis. And I moved to France, and I ended up staying. I thought I was going to be there for about 9 months, and I ended up staying for 3 years. And it was during that time that I started writing novels during a very snowy winter. And I got right into long form creative writing while there. And I would go into the city, into Paris on the weekends, and I just tried to soak up every possible moment and detail of that experience. And now, returning home to the States, I have tried to maintain a relationship with French and that experience by, trying to retain that sense of comprehension and also the verbal output of like the French that I worked on for 3 years by listening to and watching shows without the subtitles. Sometimes I'm more successful than others, but what is that show? I think it's in Paris, the Parisian Agency. That's another show on Netflix that's really fun to watch without the subtitle.
Man, I'm gonna have to write that down so I can add that to my list. I'm always looking for like new and interesting because I feel like I've gone through like my comfort TV shows and I need to like leave Supernatural alone. I keep trying to get. I literally I haven't gotten through all of the seasons yet because I kind of gave up. Like I made it to 8, and then after that I was like, I think we're gonna have to stop and find
The
something.
Winchester Boys, yeah.
Something different. So I'm gonna write that down. And this actually makes so much sense, like with the book where Addison and Connor end up going. Like I like this little nugget is tying everything. So yeah, definitely everybody needs to go get this book when it comes out. And last question, how are you going to celebrate Publish Day?
Uh, my favorite question. I'm going to have a bookstore in-person launch party at Powell's in Oregon. Powell's is, of course, an icon of independent bookstores. And I'm so excited to be celebrating with Powell's on launch day and also in conversation with a friend of mine, thriller author Mary Kilikoa. I can promise book cake, and and I'm not going to be taking any of it home with me. I'm just going to go deep while we're there. I'm very excited. I think there will also be sushi at some point to celebrate. That's how I usually like to mark book launches.
That sounds like so much fun. I am super excited for you. Like I said, can't wait for everybody to get their hands on it on July 30th. And oh my gosh, is there anything else that you would want the readers to know about your dark secrets?
This is a thriller, absolutely, but it's got the heaviest dose of romance that I've written yet, and it was so much fun to explore those relationships with that dynamic. But it's a thriller, and I know that readers that have discovered my work in the past, I think they will be happy with this result, and I'm hoping that new readers will discover me for the first time with this book, and really enjoy the twists and turns that my characters take.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so, so, so much for allowing Brit+Co to chat with you about your dark secrets. We can't wait for our readers to get to know, Addison and Connor. If they don't know your work already, we hope this will be the book that makes them say, hey, let me go back and read everything Elle Marr has written. Thank you so, so, so much. Yeah, we're going to cross our fingers. We're going to cross our fingers. So let me,
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a joy, and I've really loved chatting about books with you.
yes, yes.